I am not at home, obviously, so you can see that I am in a new location. I'm up in Portland visiting my uncle, but I am still delivering you a powerfully packed stream. You're listening and or watching Soulestic Intelligence podcast, and I am your host and the Chief Embodiment Officer of Soulestic Intelligence, Amelie. And I have a really exciting, well, maybe not exciting, but I have a really deep message today that came through. So, last week I had a pretty powerful realization about the defeminization of women and just the lack of feminine voice in our culture. And I created a live stream that I was going to do called Wisdom Danced. And I ended up doing that last Wednesday, and it was a pretty powerful transmission that came through. So if you have not watched that, I encourage you to go and watch that and see if you can, add to the conversation. There's quite a bit of information in there. Like I was still trying to piece it all together, but I had to get it out. So it was something that came in and was very, very powerful. I do have a couple new messages to bring in today. First and foremost is I am launching two different programs. One is for women only, and it is a course designed to look at 10 different domains in your life. So, love, beauty, your expression, your body, time, purpose, all these different domains that are in your life, and establishing really strong boundaries of what you will and will not accept from, the world and even from yourself. Sometimes I feel like we are our biggest critics, and we are the ones that typically will silence ourselves, especially if you're very feminine and are afraid to speak up. So we're going to talk about that today for sure. The other program that I have is a program called Engine or Essence Over Engines, and this one is a program that is designed to help you grow your soft skills. And so Essence Over Engines has been something that I've been kind of incubating for quite some time now. Jean-Pierre, welcome. Thank you. It's something that I've been kind of nurturing for the last, I would say the last 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. Hi, Angela. Welcome, you guys. And I have a webinar coming up on the 31st. So if you guys are interested in joining me on that webinar, I'll post the link in the description, but it is a 555 course. So it's only 555 for an 8-week course. It's a group course, and it is designed to help bring awareness to some of the digital burnout that we experience that we don't even know about. It's such a quiet epidemic going on right now of the rise of this digital from analog switch. I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for joining me. Yeah, hi Rebecca. So that one is a great one. It is designed to help you lead. If you're a mother if you're in leadership of anything, it helps to grow and build your energy and to be just this beautiful, voiced, confident being in your work and to find more satisfaction. And the soft skills that you learn in that is helped to design, it's really designed to raise your emotional frequency. And it also is part of a social intelligence that you might want to bring into your relationships, into your community. So it really helps to kind of connect you to those things. That webinar is going to be happening on July 31st, 5 p.m. Pacific time. So, hi, Tucker. All right, well, let's get started. So today's topic is called Deadly Silence. And the reason why I brought this transmission to you guys today is because I realized the impact of being silenced, of silencing your own voice, of not speaking up when you know you want to, being afraid that if you do speak up, something terrible is going to happen to you. So, we're going to talk a lot about the epigenetic reasons of why that might be happening. We're going to be talking about why silence, obviously, silence is good for you to rest and kind of, you know, really look at the things that you have been thinking about and really cognitively start dipping into some of your memories and really learn to integrate some of the knowledge that you have with the new knowledge that you've gained and, you know, sort that out. I think a lot of us would say that yes, we love novelty. Yes, we love expanding. We love growth. At least if you're here, you're probably attracted to that kind of messaging and that information. But there is this really deep seated core of our society, and it doesn't matter if you're an American or what nation you're a part of, there is this really deep core, just deep seated thread of silence, of not speaking up, of not being present in your own body and saying the things that you need to say. And even more so, what I found fascinating, and as I'm ruminating over all of this information of the truth about our society, is the other part of this is, hi Mike. Mike's here. We can get started. We have, women that protest, and you know, I can be even accused of this. You look at the protests and you're like, oh, they're crazy. Oh, they're hysterical. Oh, they're too much. They're, they're just raging. And it's kind of mocked in our society. Instead of listening to, okay, let's look at what the core message. So I started like, it kind of sent ripples through my system of, some of the, like the Women's March. When that happened, I was kind of like, I don't agree with that. It wasn't in alignment with me, and I didn't align to that message. However, as I'm reflecting on it, looking back at it, I'm like, oh, maybe I have some some wounding where I wouldn't speak up. And so seeing another woman speak up, triggered me in a way that I would reject their message and not hear what they were essentially saying. So there's a few different waves of feminism that happened, and that, in the first wave there was likely a really good cause for it, but over time it's kind of been pervaded and saturated with other messages that go into it that don't align with the core of what the women are asking for. Or maybe the women in those protests or in those marches don't know the clear message of what they're asking for. There's a lot of confusion, there's misalignment. They're just, feminine rage is important, but doing it in a belligerent way versus doing it in a coherent way where you can actually understand and see the core of what the argument is important. Carlos, hello. Mr. Palad, hello. Thank you. So let's just dive into the topic here. So when I'm talking about the topic of deadly silence, I'm not talking about the volume of it. So if you're raising your voice to be heard, that is coming from kind of this hurt level, low energy position. What we really want to do is speak up in a coherent way where wisdom and knowledge and experience and this divine presence from the unseen realm is present in that. And then speaking up matters. So when the woman doesn't speak, that's when something dies in that silence. Something is dying in that silence. And we're going to go over some archetypal stories of what the story is and some of the wisdom that we can kind of glean from that story As you guys know, I love archetypal stories. So when the world doesn't fall apart because we have too much feminine expression. In fact, we love feminine expression. We love it. I was looking back at some of my previous topics of streams that I had done, and the topic of feminine communication was one of those. And I was talking about how important, even in the even in a male, gendered life, like that female expression, that feminine energy expression within his being is important if he's doing something like art. So if you're, let's say you're a musician and you're really deep into your art, there's a bit of feminine expression that comes from engaging in that flow state of feeling, the this divine stuff that comes out of that art, or even, the statues or these really beautiful architectural buildings that are all over Europe and, some in America. But you have these really grand, and even Asia, you have these really grand, beautiful buildings that have this really deep, lovely architecture that when you see it, it just almost takes your breath away of how beautiful and harmonious and how difficult it must have been, but they did it effortlessly without all of the technology that we have today. And so there really is no such thing as too much feminine. In fact, the idea, like, I've put a lot of thought into the fear of being too much, and really it's not a fear of being too much, but you can have that as a fear, thinking that you're going to be rejected if you express yourself in a certain way. And I had to kind of transition that being too much. So me coming out and speaking is a way for me to take whatever energy that I have, transmute it, and deliver it into something that alchemizes into teaching a collective story. I'm just merely being an oracle for what is coming in. So that expression can be seen as too much. Sometimes when I'm in a certain situation, I don't want to speak into the situation because, some of these thoughts are still kind of forming. And even last week, as I was doing my Wisdom Danced episode, a lot of the ideas that I was pulling through were still forming, they were still refining within myself. And so now I can bring this message to you guys today. But the world doesn't fall apart because of too much feminine expression. In fact, it fractures when the feminine is afraid to speak. And this could be for both men and women. This is not a gendered situation. Now, it does fall a lot on the feminine, on the female of the population. But imagine if you didn't have new music come out, new television shows, new art pieces, new models of cars, new models of technology. That innovation is coming from this creative birthplace within your system. And so when the feminine is afraid to speak, there's this fracture that happens within our society. And so when we're looking at what the next piece of this is what happens to society when the feminine voice is censored, ignored, or even willingly silenced. And that happens, I'm seeing it everywhere now. Like, I can't unsee it. It dropped in so hard, now I can't unsee it. I see it in institutions, I see it in family units, I see it in our, discourse on social media platforms. I see it everywhere where we either censor ourselves or we try to censor others. We ignore ourselves or we try to ignore others. We silence ourselves or we try to silence others. And we're going to be looking at some myths that kind of go with this flow here. But what happens to society when we do this, when we censor and we silence and we ignore that feminine expression? So what I've seen in the storylines is that the silence happens before collapse. The silence happens before collapse. And collapse isn't bad. In fact, this whole idea of like end times, end of ages, it's so linear, and that's so male thinking that you're not including this cyclical nature of, where we live. Women experience the cycle, monthly from their teens until, their midlife. They experience these cycles, and even still before. But monthly cycles, we have seasons, which are these cycles. We have all of these cycles, present in our realm, 3D realm that we're in, the natural realm. And so when you note that, you know that there is this birth, and then it goes to death, and then it rebirths into another cycle. And you can see that within yourself. So like am when I'm getting these like big downloads, like there is a period of time where I have a recovery period to kind of rehabilitate and resituate and reorient to the messages that were coming in from this divine presence into, okay, now it's a coherent discussion. I can have the talk, and then I can go work on the next big moment of brilliance, because the moments of brilliance are the moments that the feminine expression is literally pulling from the divine, from the heavenly realms down into earth. So as in Christianity, there is the Lord's Prayer, and the whole Lord's Prayer, one of the verses in there is on earth as it is in heaven, right? So if we've been repeating this over and over and over as a society for 2,000 years, we're asking for the veil of heaven and earth to kind of be really thin and to bring it down, because we want to experience that heaven. We want to experience that joy. We want to experience that rapture. My opinions on rapture are not the opinions of what the churches say that it is. So we'll just kind of go there. But the silence that comes before the collapse, it comes because the empire has destroyed the feminine, or is misusing it or abusing it. And so we'll look at the stories of how that's a truth that is kind of ruminating throughout our culture and our societies, even since ancient civilization. So in every dying empire, you'll find a muted mother, and we'll talk about the mother. You'll find a shamed daughter, or like a gagged oracle. We're going to talk about all of these archetypes that sit in our societies. When women are taught to stay polite, or stay pretty, or stay safe, society starts to lose the truth telling that happens. And the truth telling is very, very important, because if you don't have truth telling, then you're living in an illusion of something that is, it kind of works, but it's also abusive. It feels like you get burnt out. You're not being fed or nurtured by this motherly feminine energy. And we need that. Even, as children, we definitely need that. In fact, there was a case study from an observation, what was the guy's name? Where he had, they had destroyed this rat laboratory, and the guy that was working at the facility, he was like, well, I'm going to go to the zoo. And so he started observing these rhesus monkeys. And then as he was observing it at the zoo, he was decided he was going to start buying the monkeys and bring them into the lab so he can do, laboratory observations on them. And this is back in the 50s. And then, so he started bringing them in, and they got sick. And so when the rhesus monkey mother would give birth, he would remove lab technicians would remove the baby immediately from the mother and place them in a segregated area, so as not to cause them to have any diseases or to die from, exposure to whatever diseases were there. Well, what he observed is that when they started doing that, the baby monkeys, would be socially awkward because they weren't having that, that nature nurture relationship with their mother as babies. So he observed that there was this awkward behavior that was happening, and then he developed with Bowlby, and Bowlby's the only guy I can think of right now. I think it's Hayes, but he developed this monkey experiment where he had he had a wired mother that would feed the baby monkey that looked kind of like had a face and had it looked like a monkey kind of and still gave milk, and then it had a wired monkey that had no face, no, there's no similarity in expression or anything like that. And they found that they desired that, motherly looking monkey, something that looks similar to them more so. So this whole experiment, this observation that turned into an experiment that is a very famous case study now, demonstrated how important that mother-child nurturing relationship is in the socialization of the children that were brought forth. So that was a really huge behavioral study that was done that demonstrates how important it is for, that feminine presence to be there to nurture the children, so that when we're growing up, that we're raised in this beautiful social environment where we can communicate with others. And I mean, we can look out in our society, we can look in social media, and we can see that there is this disruption in that mother to child relationship. And now it's kind of, you can see how it's kind of blossoming throughout our social media and our society. Even people that isolate and then they're thinking, oh, okay, I can just go online and have my online social relationship. It's not always the best method of keeping yourself in a good relationship with others. Okay. So we need that truth telling. We need that nurture from the woman. We need that feminine expression for innovation and creativity in music and all the art forms that we have. Even for people that come on like I'm doing now, and I'm expressing myself from this. This is a pleasing way for me to express myself. This is my favorite form of expression, is talking about topics that I've been ruminating over, and I really don't have a lot of people to talk to about it because, for whatever reason, that's just the case that it is. But I like having my platform to be able to share this and express it to you guys because it's helpful. Chances are you're here because you're listening to something that is helpful to you, that is nurturing a part of your mind, or maybe even stirring your heart of looking at something in a different way, of hearing something that sounds novel, that isn't really talked about. And so you're like, oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. I love finding people that are like dropping really interesting information, making me think about things a different way. And so they're sharing their feminine expression. Hi, Tim. Thanks for the timely and important discussion. You're welcome. Thanks for your conversation about it too. It helped to formulate what my topic was going to be today. So the next piece I'm going to say, and this is not like gender rolled at all, but the feminine voice is the nervous system of our culture, of any culture. That feminine voice, how the society treats their women, is going to show you what the nervous system of the culture is. So when it goes numb, things will start to decay because it loses the truth telling. And then that's when empires collapse. In a relationship, let's look at it at a fractal level. If we're looking at it at a fractal level and we're looking at, let's say, a husband and wife, and let's say they have children, they've been together for 7 years, right? And the woman isn't speaking truth to her man, to her husband. And so he's doing all the things that he thinks he needs to do, but she's silenced herself. She's iced out, ignoring him, not talking. And goes basically numb in her system. So in their mystical union as husband and wife, they're one people. And so there is this air where it's been okay for her to silence her voice, not speak up. Maybe he said, don't talk to me like that. Don't nag me. Don't do this. Don't do that. And then she's like, okay, I'm just not going to say anything. So, one of the stories that I'm going to be talking about is the story of Abigail. So, in the story of Abigail and David, the so the base of it is David is being hunted by King Saul, and so David is, on the run, and he ends up going to Abigail and her husband. It's really her husband's acreage or farm, and he asks the servants of the farm, "Hey, do you think you guys could feed and, you know, feed our horses, feed my men, give us a place to rest because we're on the run?" And Nabal is like, "Heck no! Like, get the f out, bruh." And so that snubs David. David's very upset about the way that Nabal has treated him. And so David's response is anger, war. I'm going to destroy you for snubbing me. This is man to man. This is the governance that happens. You snub me, I'm going to destroy you. And in the Bible, it says, I'm going to kill every man that piss against the wall. Like, I am going full berserk. Everyone is going to be eliminated. And Abigail, Nabal's wife, hears about this. And so she is like, oh my gosh. And so she gets all her servants to make them food and sends them out first and brings the food to David. And then she goes and she falls at his feet. And she says, let this be on my head. Well, why would it be on her head? Why would it be on her head? What did she say? She says, I have rebelled against God for not speaking up to my husband and, speaking truth to him to correct him. And now he's become this alienating, terrible man because I didn't speak truth to him. So this is the fractal relationship, right? If we're in a husband and wife relationship and I'm afraid to speak the truth to my husband and he's not willing to hear it anyways, there's this disruption in the relationship, and then things are going to slowly fall apart. It's going to collapse. It's decaying as you don't speak. So the numbness that comes from lack of being able to have that feminine expression, whether or not it sounds coherent or not, the man is getting value out of listening to the woman in her wisdom. So she's got a lot of wisdom and he's not hearing it because he thinks that he's above her, she's of no use to him. Then you're going to have this imbalance in the relationship. And this happens, like when it happens in the family unit, our society is made up all of these family units. And so if it's happening on a massive scale, then the society, you're going to start to see it fall. Because now there's no, the story of silence, the story of ignoring, and the story of censoring becomes the norm. And then the society can't hear the truth telling that's happening. So maybe in these protests that are happening with the, like the Women's March, there is some sort of truth there. But because we censor, because we ignore, we're not even able to like distill it down into what is the true thing that they're saying here? What is the truth that is being said here? And so truth tellers are super important. I know of men who are important truth tellers that I value very highly in my life, and they're not afraid of expressing their truth telling. And it's because they have embraced the wisdom and embodiment of that femininity, of expressing themselves, of speaking truth to power. Hi, Tyler. speaking truth to power, and just the general expression. It's very important for a man to be embodied in that feminine embodiment as well. It's not just for women, as I'm saying. And, the people that I've found that are the most brilliant artists are connected with this mother wisdom. They have this embedded in their system. Okay, so we talked about the numbness. All right, let's talk about some archetypal warnings. So, at the end of the Abigail and David story, Abigail is like, like, don't punish the servants. Don't even punish my husband. This is all on me for not speaking truth to my husband, for silencing myself, for censoring myself. And so that's really there's probably a lot of other stories of a lot of other truths that come from it, but that's the truth of that story, is that she did not speak truth to her husband. And because of that, there was going to be a lot of murder that would have happened. That story could have gone a lot different. And so when ended up happening is that staved David off. He was like, okay, at least my men are fed. At least the horses are being taken care of. I'm not going to go out and murder everybody now. And then because they didn't do that, Nabal ends up having a heart attack and dying like a week later. I don't think it was very long after that situation happened. And so you see how her coming forth and being like, you know what, this is on my head. I wasn't speaking. And that caused my husband to become this monster. And it's my fault for not interfering with the trajectory of where he was going. So it really becomes the feminine voice is this nervous system of our culture. And the nervous system is so important, you guys. So I talk about it all the time. But let's look at some other archetypal stories that relate to this. I'm doing well today. I'm in a new location. But let's talk about the archetypal warnings from myth and history. So first is the story of Cassandra, and this is a Greek myth. So Cassandra was gifted with prophecy and was cursed to never be believed. Okay? She warned of Troy's destruction. So we all know the story of Troy. They have the Trojan horse. But she's there and she's like, Troy's got to get destroyed. Troy's got to get destroyed. But nobody believes her. Nobody believes her. They're just like ignored her. And the city burns down. So the warning here is that when the feminine warns and is dismissed, then blood and destruction and fire follow when you ignore that feminine voice that is warning you. So we can apply that wisdom to our lives today. That the whistleblowers, the intuitive mothers, and the artists that are very sensitive to the things that are going on, they're sounding the alarm, and you can either ignore it or you can take it to heart and take action. So when the city of Troy, when they all ignored Cassandra's voice, there was a lot of death that happened. So we can look at, modern whistleblowers, like how do we treat our whistleblowers, the people that are warning us of things. Obviously you have to determine, like, are they speaking truth? But, taking it into consideration, is this true? The intuitive mother, when something is going to happen, or you feel it in your bones or in your gut, like something is going to happen to my child, like you have this entanglement with your children. You have this entanglement with your family. You have an entanglement with certain people in your life. And so when you're very intuitive, you can access information from an unseen realm, because quantum entanglement happens when, like, the two people don't even have to be in the same room, but it happens instantaneously. It's not even, there's no delay. Hey, what happened? I don't know. Are you guys still hearing what I'm saying? Okay, moving on to Eve. I did talk about the story of Eve last week in Wisdom Danced. So, the story of Eve is that she spoke to the serpent. So, she was the first one that was questioning authority. And this is a truth to power story. And how do we treat it? What happened to your video a few moments ago? I don't know. I didn't see anything happen. I should be on. I don't know. I have two bars, but I'm on full Wi-Fi, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it. So when she spoke truth to power, what happened after that? Her silence, she was silenced basically, and being the a, alleged mother of the people, she was silenced, and it created generational shame, which is embedded in every single institution of our society. Oh, that's weird. I didn't take this one down. Hopefully it's still going. But, like, what if the silence of her caused this generational shame that we live with every day? And this doesn't apply to women only. This is men are affected by it as well. We're all affected by silencing the feminine. So when you have this myth story, and the society is basing silence women, ignore women, censor women because of this embedded story of, we don't want women questioning authority. They don't have the authority to do that. And now we're going to silence her and shame her for being a woman, for, eating of the fruit. Well, that's crazy. First and foremost, it's mind-boggling to me. I'm trying to really work it out in my mind today of like how that happened, and then just observing everything around me of what's oh yeah, like and subscribe if you're here and you're enjoying the discussion. But the Adam and Eve story of the fall of Eden, nobody talks about. Well, Adam knew what the rules were too, but he followed suit of eating the forbidden fruit with Eve. But he's not held accountable for that. There's no accountability in that story for him there. It all fell like blame the woman, shame the woman, blame the woman, and we still do that today. We don't honor the feminine expression, that voice that questions authority that we actually need in our society now. Like, we need people to, question authority, not just let the authority run rampant, especially in our American society. Like, our society is built on the people are the top of the food chain, not the politicians, definitely not the president. They're all public servants, and that's how it's all written in the Constitution. But we treat them as these celebrities, these saviors. And, when you speak truth to that power, now, I mean, even with AI, you're being targeted, and like all of this information that is political in nature, and news information, news media, or even social media, it's all personalized to you based, and it builds this algorithm on the things that you like, on the things that that they identify with you. And so you kind of get stuck in this echo chamber. So questioning authority is important, and not that you have to do everything that the feminine expression is saying, but it is something to consider as far as what am I divining out of this information? So when the feminine voice is branded as dangerous, wisdom becomes exile. And that's what we learn from the Eve story. There's no accountability. There's no like discussion of the accountability of Adam to Eve when, you know, that he was responsible for her. That's his partner. That's his mutually beneficial partner, his helper in the garden. And nobody looks at his responsibility of it. He didn't rebuke her, and he could have rebuked her. That would have been the wisest part. You eating this fruit was forbidden and you knew it. Why did you do it? Rebuking her. Instead, he followed suit and then blamed her for it. He didn't take responsibility. But when we start to brand the feminine voice, it could be art, it could be somebody's actual expression, it could be something they're saying, as dangerous, that wisdom becomes exiled. And that's the beginning of the silence of wisdom. And wisdom and understanding and knowing are all important things as we're looking at what this feminine energy is within our own selves, because we're all made male and female. The masculine and feminine energies within us. All right, the next one. So we all know of The Little Mermaid. It's a Disney movie. And it somewhat represents the original Andersen story, but we're gonna talk about the original Andersen story. So what happens in The Little Mermaid? She gives up her voice to gain love. And how many of us are doing that? Giving up our voice for love. It's a trade-off. It's not honoring your voice. So she gives up her voice to gain love, walks on knives, and then dies. So when this is so prevalent in our society, we women will mute ourselves for the approval of our lover, of our husband, of society, of our workplace, everywhere. Even our children sometimes will give up our voice for them to approve of us. And then what happens? You suffer in silence. The things that you want to express are just inwardly hitting you. It's like basically the knives are cutting inside of you, if we were looking at this in an analogy. Those knives that she was walking on are the knives that are pointed inward from being in silence and wanting to say something, but just kind of cutting yourself instead of saying the thing. So the feminine voice, the voice or expression, can be looked at as a way to express anger. And you don't have to be angry to do it, but just saying the thing that you need to say to tell the truth of the situation is important. So what happens in this story, the analogy here is that the women will suffer in silence and eventually dissolve. They'll dissolve down into nothing substantial. They'll be lacking that substance. So the warning here, the mirror here, is shrinking to be loved or choking back truth to be chosen. And I wrote a story about the tragedy of almost because I was feeling really deeply into that. Not just in my own life, but in society. We have so many women that shrink to be, because they might be in fear of being too much. They're shrinking to be loved. They're choking back the truth. They're not telling the truth because they think if they tell the truth, they're not going to be chosen. And that suffers a society a great deal. And it also suffers, it suffers the men that are here to protect and provide. It takes away their purpose. Men love tasks, and they love tasks from women they love. Okay? They love to do tasks for their women. And when they don't have that purpose, I've seen it happen so often. Like when I have a male friend that breaks up with, somebody that they truly loved, it happens in my family, it happens in friendships. When they don't have a purpose to serve, be it a woman, be it, a mission, be it a task, when they don't have that and they're kind of lost purposelessly lost, and they're trying to figure out what their whole mission and goal and vision in life is. When they don't have that feminine feeding into that, they will be lost. So it not just affects women, this affects men too. So shrinking or choking back truth in order to be loved or chosen is a dangerous avenue to go down. Thanks. You guys can hear me good. It's a dangerous avenue to go down. So the next story I want to bring up is one I brought up a couple weeks ago, but we'll talk about it again, is the story of Demeter and Persephone. So this is another Greek myth. Demeter is the mother of Persephone. So Persephone is stolen against her will and and is taken to the underworld, where she is to marry Hades. And so when Persephone is taken out of the overworld, Demeter grieves in silence. She doesn't say anything, and the earth ends up dying. It turns to winter. So there's a famine, winter, there's nothing to feed. The earth basically dies with Demeter. And it's only when she finally roars and then starts to bargain with Hades and her husband, Zeus, of, hey, I want my daughter back. Then they have a deal. Persephone had eaten some pomegranate seeds, and so she had to stay in the underworld because that was the rule. But she finally makes a bargain and says, I want my daughter back. And so that's where, the story of this seasons comes from. There's this cycle of seasons. So when Persephone returns to the underworld in autumn, then everything kind of dies away. And then in spring, when she comes back to be with her mother, then Demeter is happy again. And so all of the life is brought forth again. So think about that. Like Demeter silencing herself created this barren world, and the land around her mirrored the voice. And I often think, like, when things happen as far as natural disasters, I'm like, oh, okay, what's the message here? What's the lesson here? What are we learning here? But think about that, like if you had a mother that silenced herself in a relationship, and like let's say your mother silenced herself from her father, and so you're brought up observing this mother silencing herself and then having this male only dominated relationship, you might have a different you might have an opinion about that. You might have certain quirks or behaviors or even some sort of mental facility about that situation happening in your life. Because you watched your mother get walked all over, you watched your mother stab herself essentially, and you watched without nurture and love, and it's really difficult unless the mother spoke truth to father. I've heard it a lot of times, and trigger warning for you guys, but I have a really deep heart for the mothers who know that their daughters are being abused, either sexually or in another way, and they don't speak up to the perpetrator. And then what effect does that have on the child, on that daughter? Like it causes a distortion in the mentality of the child, because that mother didn't nurture her child like that's her responsibility. Instead, she chose silence and chose to be dominated and governed by the male, whomever it was. Could be your brother, it could be the father, anybody. And it's like I said, it was a trigger warning, but that happens, and that pull away, that distortion of the nurture relationship from a mother and daughter perspective, it wreaks havoc. Like we see it all over the place. It's the land and the people and the environment will mirror what is going on in these relationships. Okay, so the mirror here, as if we're looking at this from a modern day perspective, is generational trauma in families, which is epigenetic memory. Epigenetic is in our DNA. Memory is where women don't speak of it, just don't talk about it. It's going to harm the reputation. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. But we have this acceptance of, oh, that's just generational trauma. It's an epigenetic function. We don't even talk about it, and we don't bring awareness to it. And so again, that generational trauma is passed down into the rest of the family, and it keeps on going and going until somebody stands up and says, no more of this. I I'm cleaning up the DNA. We're ending this trauma cycle here and now. And we can do that. It's energy. Energy work, it may not be super scientifically founded, but it does work. People do clean up, and you can see it in real time where generations, I don't think that 7 generations from Native American, sayings is necessarily incorrect. Like, I think it's actually really true. If you look at the past 7 generations and you look at the forward 7 generations and you think, what am I going to do to heal all of these generations that are around me? Because you can go back and heal that. You can speak about it. You got to speak up about it. You've got to be aware about it. And if you're here and you're interested in learning how to speak up about it, and you happen to be a woman, I have a new course that's being launched. It's 222 for 4 weeks. And we go and we anchor in boundaries around 10 domains of your life where you speak up, and you speak up for each of these domains, because this is how you start to heal yourself as a feminine. And if you're a man watching this, and I would encourage you to reach out to the feminine in the females in your life that might benefit from that. If they're people pleasing, they don't know how to speak up, they don't have strong boundaries, and you can tell that they're silencing themselves. Now is the time for you to protect and to provide them with a voice, because you love the women in your life. All right. So the last one is Philomela. And this is another Greek myth. I always like to talk about the Greek myths, but this one is where she was raped by her brother-in-law, and then her tongue gets cut out. So she weaves her story into a tapestry and then sends it to her sister to tell her the story. Like, she uses art to express what happened to her. So she, even though she doesn't have a tongue, even though she's, essentially mute, she uses her feminine will to create the truth in using a tapestry to express the story. So we can look at this as far as, I talked a lot about art, but I talk about art, I talk about protesting, and then storytelling as a way to encode the truth from these silenced women. So maybe, here I am sitting in front of my black mirror on YouTube telling a story, telling these stories, and sharing this information with you. But other women or men might use art. They might sing a song, they might paint a picture, they might, do videos, or create whatever. I mean, we've got YouTube. There's so much art out there right now that's going on that can encode some of the energetic, emotional pain that is within, and expressing it outwardly. So instead of having it cut inside, they express it outwardly. So my storytelling on YouTube is a way for me to express my feminine rage. I don't know if it's really ragey, but it's the truth that as I'm seeing it, being a vessel and sharing this information with you, instead of being silent, instead of being afraid to be seen, instead of being afraid of being seen as too much, instead of being afraid to not speak. Not speaking is more dangerous to society in my opinion, from my perspective, than the silence and accepting everything for what it is. Okay? So let's look at the cultural costs of feminine silence. And like I said, this is not gendered. This is not specific to any gender. This is just the cultural costs of feminine silence, because men and women both participate in this silence, censorship, and ignoring of the feminine voice, of the feminine expression, which is a domain that I talk about in my women only program. So the intuition gets exiled is our first one. So logic dominates, and we call it truth, quote unquote, even if it kills. So logic dominates. Where have we seen that? Let's talk about the digital age of my series. Logic dominates. Technology, AI. Yeah, there's a little bit of innovation that comes from that, but it's also mimicking the human intelligence. I believe that our bodies, all this AI stuff, all this technology stuff, they're getting that downloaded from our bodies, the way that we were made. They're mimicking the human technology, the human intelligent technology. So we see this huge logic dominating, and naturally I'm like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? What does that mean for wisdom if logic dominates? This male only dominating governance. What does that mean? It means that we are exiling intuition again. We're replaying the story again. Like nobody is speaking up. I'm not going to say nobody, because I did find there were people that are talking. There are people that are talking about this. It's just not like as knowledgeable and expansive as I think it should be. But yeah, so we have this logic domination, which is coming in like you can see it playing out in art, the domination of art as far as like technology is concerned. Because what happens when we have all of this? What I discovered is that with the AI, with technology, that it suppresses the human system, causes an overload, and now we have trouble communicating with one another. Our social life is like terrible. We have all this information at our fingertips, but wisdom is there's this deficit of wisdom. We don't have understanding. Mental health has gone from, it's going up. Like mental health disorders are going up because we're so locked into this technology. We're locked into the logic of it. We're locked into the worlds that it creates instead of being locked into our own physical bodies and seeing that for what it is. So what else happens as a feminine silence culture cost is art becomes algorithm. So now we have beauty as a commodity, and it's not something that's communal. Beauty is now seen as a commodity. The algorithm is taking over as far as personalizing everything to your own personal echo chamber. And that's not going to give you wisdom. It's going to feed you basic bitch shit instead of having the art that comes from creativity and novelty. That algorithm is going to slowly degrade, and eventually you're going to be caught in your own echo chamber eating yourself and not and feeling depressed because you're not getting that novelty download. Like, we like excitement, and that's what novelty is. It's something new. It's something like we do it all the time with our dopamine chases online. Care is also professionalized. It's no longer a sacred thing to care for somebody else. It's now a profession. And it takes away from the intuitive nature, away from the nurture, where it's now a professional thing. I'll tell you guys a story about this. The nurses that I've been encountering, I think originally they were probably very nurturing. They were very caring about their patients, but now I'm seeing that it's all about following the protocol. It's not about engaging with their patient and really understanding if they're unable to speak, or understanding like their pain, or connecting with them. It's like this cold professional setting. They're getting cared for, but it's not getting like a mothery, nurtury care. It's just getting the logical, okay, we're just going to do this. It's professional. It's not a sacred thing to care for somebody. Suffering goes unnamed is another culture cost of feminine silence. So the suffering, if you don't name what the suffering is, then it has reason to grow. The darkness can only be strongest when there's no light, and it doesn't take a lot of light to end the suffering. It just takes acknowledgement. It takes acknowledgement. So if suffering goes unnamed, it's going to be growing in the shadows. It's going to grow bigger and bigger because it's like, oh, okay, well, now I have a space to grow. And we don't want that. I don't think we want that. We don't want suffering. The next culture cost of feminine silence is the boys are motherless, even if they have a mother that they're raised by. If the mother doesn't speak up and aren't voicing their perspective to their boys, like they're essentially growing up motherless. And it breaks my heart. Like I had a great mother. I could talk to her about all kinds of things. And so I don't necessarily know what it's like to be motherless, even though my mother has passed away. But boys who don't have mothers aren't given the demonstration of how it is to interact with the feminine out in the real world. And I had that happen today. I don't know what the guy's background is, but it was somebody on my Facebook, and he had picked a fight with a woman and was calling her name. I don't know what the premise was, but he comes to me and he's like, hey, will you help me finish my jokes to this woman? And her friend had said, like, you don't know this woman. She's caring, she's loving, naming all the things. She's a great mother, she's a great wife, very understanding, gives to the community, is this beautiful woman. And this boy, essentially, he's the same age as me, but he comes out and he's like, I'm not done berating this other woman that this woman is protecting. Can you tell her to unblock me, or send this information to her? And I'm just thinking, like, how hurt are you? Did you not have a mother growing up? But this is very common. It's not even a one-off thing. It might sound kind of wild and interesting, that would be something that people, but we see it all the time online. Just go to Reddit. I'm sure you can find a Reddit stream that talks about that. Oh, thanks, Mike. So you have these boys, but if their mothers aren't being mothers and they're silencing their voice, they're being censored, they're being ignored, and then the boys don't know how to relate to their mothers, and this is common, and the women aren't voicing themselves in their relationships. They're just letting the men take over. I heard a story about this today. It's very, very sad, where the mother's like, basically, I'm going to kill myself because you interfered with my ability to love a man. Putting her own censorship, her own silence, and putting it on her son, who now is going to have this, he probably already has a complex, but who now is going to like run off with this complex of, if I leave a woman, then I'm potentially killing her, or some, whatever the story that you come up with that. All right. The final cultural cost of silence is the cycles are shamed. So we were talking about, the feminine cycles, we were talking about season cycles, but this also includes grief. So grief is not linear. And I learned this when my mom was dying and died, is grief is not linear. Grief is very swirly. It's very cyclical. One minute you feel like you've accepted it, and then the next day you're just weeping. And then the next day you're like accepting it again. And then the next day you're in denial that it even happened and you're thinking that you can call the person. Grief is a very deep cyclical experience. It's not linear. You cannot linear linearly make your way out of grief. And that linear grief model is totally incorrect in my estimation. I don't know if people have experienced grief in that linear space, but I find it hard to believe that if you were a living, breathing, emotional human being and you lose somebody or something that meant a lot to you, that the grief of it is not cyclical. Like, I still cry about my mom being gone. And, it's okay. I've accepted it for the most part, but there still are moments where that cyclical cycle will come up. And, you know, especially during like canning season and gardening season, I really miss her. Those are reminders. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, obviously as time goes on, it gets a lot easier. But in the beginning, it's this really chaotic tornado of you don't know what you're going to feel from one day to another when you have lost someone or something that means a lot to you. We can even look at this if you get a divorce or you break up with your boyfriend or your boyfriend breaks up with you or whatever the separation is. The grief cycle isn't always linear. It's very cyclical. Yeah. Zelero Morales says, I miss my father all the time and he died 25 years ago. Agreed. Like, it's like you don't, if you're thinking that the grief cycle is linear, that is a logistical, masculine dominated thought. It's very, very cyclical. And it's okay for it to be cyclical. It's really meant to be that way because it helps you kind of, I don't want to say ruminate because I already used that, but it really helps you to distill all of the feelings down into, okay, now I've like addressed all of the loss that I'm experiencing, especially when you lose a father. Like my father died 15 years ago and I still see these things come up where it's like, oh, I see how that affected me. Oh, I see how that affected me. And my father, I mean, for all intents and purposes, he left when I was 3. And so I had even more like missing of that father. I didn't have a relationship with him, but when he died, it was just like it kind of ballooned up in my face. I was like, oh my gosh, I've got a lot of things to address about a lot of stuff, not just his passing, but the fact that he wasn't there, the fact that, I didn't have a male role model to show me what that normal male to daughter, like father to daughter relationship looks like. And so I can somewhat sympathize with boys who don't have mothers because I know what it was like to not have the father and how much it deeply ingrained and how much I've had to dig and grow out of that. It's taking me, I mean, it's been 15 years, so it's taken me quite a bit of time just to get to this normalized, okay, the passing of my father and the fact that he wasn't there. Like, I've had a lot to work through and I've had a lot of the trauma to address. And I've finally gotten to a place where I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like, it's enough. I don't have to suffer in pain. I don't have to suffer in silence anymore. I've named the thing. And now I can name it without tears. I can name it without getting super overly emotional about it. So the other cycle is rest. We don't realize the need of rest, especially in our westernized society, especially when we're always having to be on, when we're always having to be constant, we're always plugged into technology. We don't take a time to break away from it and have a rest period. Oh, hi, Late Bear. Being a pallbearer for my grandmother gave me the greatest sense of closure since I've ever experienced with a loved one passing. That's beautiful that you got to be, carry her and move through that grief. It really is important. And so is rest. Rest is also important. Rest gets lost to this linear grind because in a linear situation, you don't know when the rest should be coming. You don't see when that rest should be coming. You're stuck in this linear path of work, 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 do, be, instead of like, okay, now I'm starting the thing. Here's when I'm going to be taking my vacation. Here's when I'm going to be taking a rest from social media. Here's when I'm going to be taking a rest from, digital technology altogether. Here's when I'm going to be taking a rest from whatever the thing is that is invading your life. When you don't have those rest cycles, you become overloaded. Your central nervous system is like, ah, it's freaking out for real. And so you lose out on the new things that come in from having that rest because our bodies need to rest, digest, repair, and regenerate. And that only happens when your nervous system is in that parasympathetic state. If it's stuck in survival mode, which is this linear grind that we're just driving down the road, just on this, we're grinding it out, that we lose that rest period. We lose the repair that our body needs. We lose the regeneration that could happen in our body. I've been going on a really deep rabbit hole about, connecting with angels and connecting with the heavenly realm and being in the rest that, is talked about in the Bible, and really trying to look at it from a holistic level here of how important that is. And then when you're rested, then you have even more connection to the divine source. So if you're not resting and you're completely grinding and you're stuck in survival mode all the time, you're not getting the downloads from the divine. You're not getting those at all. I lost my mother like 3 to 4 years ago and still haven't dealt with it. It's hard. It's hard. But just know that grief is a cycle. Like we're stuck in this male only dominated governing like linear society, when really like you have to be able to take that rest, and we don't even know how to rest when we do. How many people have like said, okay, I'm not even going to take a vacation because if I take a vacation, when I come back, everything's going to be all to hell and I'm not going to be able to handle that. So I'm just not going to even bother doing it, or I'm going to do it at this time. And then when you actually go to do the rest period, take the vacation and truly relax, you can't, because you're still on in your head. You don't know how to turn the linear grind off. We have to get back into these cycles. We have to bring the feminine embodiment back into our society. So the other cycle that gets shamed, so, taking a rest gets shamed. If you're an American, you're like, you just work, 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 you make, you earn, earn, you do. And we kind of look at other countries that take their siestas and have like months off where people, as a whole nation take time off. We in America, we kind of shame that. I'm guilty of that. I've done that. I'm like, why can't Italy just be open right now? I need to get this part. And now they're on this 4-week hiatus of taking a vacation. The whole, the whole nation does. Greece, the same thing. They're like basically shut down in winter time. So from like December until March, they're just shut down. Good luck getting something out of Greece. I realized it's probably the storms that go through there. It's not pleasant when you're in a ship to try and go from port to port. And, there's not very much tourism either that's happening in that area. So they take rest. They know to take rest. And so they have this ingrained into their national society of the understanding. But America is just was not built that way. And it doesn't mean that we can't shift and change it, but we have to be able to look at it differently and not shame the time that they take off and figure out how we can incorporate that into our society. And then the other cycle that gets shamed is depth. So going super deep, not like it kind of gets a little bit shamed. Some people might think that, what I'm talking about here is really difficult to hear, difficult to retain, difficult to understand because they don't know how to go deep underneath their own surface because they're terrified of it. They're scared of it. It's been shamed. And if they go deep within themselves, it's going to petrify them. And it could. I did a really good episode called Shadow Earth. I think it's episode 7. It was a while ago. It's at the beginning of the year. But I did a really good episode called Shadow Earth. And it's all about shadow work and the things that you should look out for, the way that you should do your own shadow work of looking at, okay, what is going on in my system? What are these feelings I'm experiencing? How deep is it going? I mean, I go deep, obviously, because I'm just not afraid and I'm so used to doing it now that I'm not going to lose myself in it. But if you're just starting out, just carefully, start doing little cycles of going deep within yourself, figuring out why you're behaving in a certain way, and then come out of it and figure that out. Don't drown in it though. And I guess that if you're interested in that and you're a woman, I have a 4-week course, 222, that helps to go into your own system and figure some stuff out, get some nice boundaries written for each, like these 10 domains it's a really beautiful course. I'm very proud of it. And then I also have a course for both men and women of, developing these soft skills, a lot of the things that we're talking about here, but we go even more intense into certain areas. And it's helped to design to have you be happier, develop the social skills, develop the and emotional skills. We look at nervous system. I do meditations and activations to help really anchor that down, and it gives you a moment to talk about it and then to have a meditation on it to really just rest with it. It gives you a little rest period in your week to really focus in on that stuff. So having somebody help guide you is important. And if it's not me, find somebody that's going to be there for you. So that one's called Essence Over Engines, and that's really geared towards targeting digital burnout, fatigue, and this loss, like the disconnection with the human nervous system. Thanks, Late Bear. Have fun. Thanks for showing up. I love that. I love that you were here. I'm almost done anyways. All right. So, as we're looking at all of these women silenced situations here, we're also looking at when the woman doesn't speak. Okay, this is the main thing. When the woman doesn't speak, the culture forgets how to feel. And when it forgets how to feel, it forgets how to heal. And so the decay, the corruption, I see it in my own tribal nation, this corruption, because they don't know how to heal. They're so terrified that they're going to lose everything, that they've lost already, that they're victims, that they're just a victim of circumstance. They're a victim of, this entity and that person and this person and that tribe. And so it's just like ingrained in their epigenetic memory. And people speak truth to power and it's ignored. But when the woman does not speak, and it doesn't have to be a woman, when you don't express your own feminine expression, male or female, the culture forgets how to heal or feel. And when it forgets how to feel, it forgets how to heal. We don't sit in that rest. We don't sit in that parasympathetic nervous system as a society, as a culture. We don't sit in it. And energy is everything. The fractal nature of just being in myself, being in a family unit, being in a community, being in a state, being in a nation, being a part of the whole collective 3D realm. It's felt as a ripple throughout all of everything that you're in. And it starts here. So you can start to do this within your own self. It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to follow suit, because they're probably not. But it doesn't take a whole lot to resonate that message out. It doesn't take a whole lot. I know that I'm probably not reaching, the thousands and millions of people right now that would benefit from hearing this message. But I'm speaking to the very few that are tuned in, that are interested in hearing what I have to say. And it's not even me. I'm speaking from this divine, I'm bringing the heaven down to earth, and I'm speaking truth to what is going on. And I'm sharing with beautiful storytelling how it impacts us and what the solution is. Not just giving you a fear message, because that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to help heal. That's my energy, is healing. So we're bringing in the muse, we're bringing in the mother, we're bringing in the oracle. These are all archetypes that we live under. I can also live under a hero archetype and see how my story is this great hero's adventure, right? So the muse reminds us that your voice is beauty. It's not noise. It requires breathing, the breath of life, to speak out of our vocal systems. It's tied to our lungs. So when we're looking at it as at our voice, we have to have a breath in our body. We have to be alive. And when we silence it, we silence our own beauty, our own expression. We silence artwork. So the muse reminds us that that voice that we have is beautiful, that it's not just noise. It's beautiful. And the voice box activates the vagus nerve in your central nervous system, which in turn helps you to rest. It helps you to rest, digest, repair, regenerate, babies. Now, the mother reminds us that your voice is protection. Okay? It's not aggression, it's protection. When you speak, do it from a place of assertiveness, not from mousiness, not from aggression. Don't be belligerent. Nobody's going to hear the message when you're belligerent. But you can wildly rage through assertive expression. If you have to be belligerent, paint a picture and make it belligerent. People like it. They love it. They feel that. The anger is felt on a deep cultural, societal level. So your voice, think of it as a way to protect yourself. Think of it as a way to protect your children and their children and their children, and maybe even repair some ancestral harm that happened within your epigenetic profile, whatever that looks like. The oracle reminds us that your voice is truth. This is all for men and women, okay? Your voice is truth, even if others fear it. Don't suppress the truth. What do they say? There's 3 things that are constant, that always show up: the sun, the moon, and truth. I think that's how the saying goes. Is that like what saying is that? Somebody will know. Mike, you're my lifeline. Help me. Okay, but your voice is truth. Your voice is truth. Like, use your voice for truth, even if others fear it, even if you get, the spears pointed at you, even if you get the stones thrown at you. Speak the truth. We need the truth to prevent collapse, to prevent decay in our society. And finally, every time a woman speaks truth, myth lives again. Let this generation be where feminine voice is no longer a ghost story. We don't want it to be a ghost story. We want to bring that down. Now, when the masculine and feminine are working together in complete embodiment with each other in a mutual beneficial way, then like the masculine is protecting the feminine and the feminine is bringing all this beauty into the world. She's bringing the truth into the world. And the man can see it because he's like, I honor her. I love her. In the Bible, a lot of people, I had somebody that said, doesn't the Bible say that the woman is supposed to submit to her husband? It's like, yeah, she's supposed to submit to her husband. But it also says that the man is supposed to submit to her too, in his own way. Okay? Like I said, it's very one-sided. It's like Eve only, submit only, and then it leaves the rest of the story out. And we want the whole story. We want that. I would love to have a man that's just protecting, providing, and allowing me to be in my own nurturative nature. And not just, like, we have this. When I read the story of Medusa and how Perseus was using her feminine power to achieve his own gains, it made me think of, some other people, like Andrew Tate. He started that Hustler U and was using women to increase his power, to increase his reach, to invade men and take their money. So women's power is being misused by some of the masculine. And it's because the women aren't speaking up against it. I don't think very many women did at the time. I wasn't hearing it anyways. I heard some men speak up against it, which was great because they were using their feminine expression. All right. Oh, it's been 90 minutes. Okay. Let's see if I have any other deliciousness for you before I pop off here. Oh yeah, let's talk about this one final piece and then I'm going to hop off. So the feminine voice is prophetic, okay? She's not asking, she's just declaring what she sees. I'm just sitting here and declaring what I see. It's just, you can think of me as a Cassandra, that's fine, but I'm just merely pointing out the things that I'm seeing. I see it all on this systematic level and it drops in and I'm working on coherently sending the message out. The feminine voice is also relational. It's not this hierarchy. She speaks with, not at. I'm not sitting here speaking at you and telling you, you have to do this, you have to do that. No. You have your own agency. You have your own sovereignty. You have your own voice. You have your own life. You choose how you get to live that out. I'm not here trying to please you. I'm here just merely declaring things to you from my own feminine voice. The feminine voice is also embodied. Her voice comes from the body and not from her brain. It comes from her body, her heart, her intuition, the way she feels about things, the signals that she's getting. So if you've ever, I can't remember if it's a study or not, but they did a mapping of the woman's brain and the man's brain during orgasm. And the woman's brain is like completely lit up. And it's because she's sensing things from all over her body, the environment. And so it's just a huge explosion where it's not as potent as it is in a man. Or it's more potent than it is in a man. Because she's in tune with her body. Her body is speaking to her. Her environment is speaking to her, and so she's able to take that information and respond to whomever is willing to listen. The feminine voice is also creative. It's not there arguing. If you see a woman arguing, it's not coming from a place of feminine voice. That is very much a masculine voice. And feminism has kind of eroded into this. Instead of speaking truth to men, they're becoming men. And that's where feminism lost its path, when it started to become the masculine only governing authority. And it's trying to take that over. Woman is not there to argue with it. She's just declaring and speaking the truth and hoping that there's another masculine out there, or anybody out there that's going to hear her voice speak creatively or whatever. She's there birthing. Okay, she's pulling it out of the ether and bringing it to earth. She is the portal for this. The feminine voice is a little lunar as well. Not lunatic-y, don't get too crazy, but it's cyclic. She's cyclic, she's flowing, right? Very non-linear, deeply timed. This beautiful cyclical energy. The feminine voice is also disruptive. She's going to name the things that are unspeakable, and it has to be said. She's going to be naming the things that are hidden and are unseen, because it needs to be brought to light. And the sacred rage, it's okay for her to have that reaction. In fact, I found that I had a lot of anger, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a lot of anger. How do I express it? I don't. It's all just kind of sitting in here, and so I was like, I better just fire up the live stream and just go live and talk about the things, so that it relieves my own system of whatever sacred rages are within me. But I very rarely get to this belligerent state. I just kind of keep it, pretty grounded. But the feminine voice matters because she names what power forgets. Okay? She carries that wisdom the world is trying to sterilize out. The world is trying to ignore it and censor it and quiet it. But she's got to speak it because it matters. And then she speaks in myth, not metrics. This is not data. I mean, I do bring in some scientific evidence, just to anchor it in. But I'm not bringing this to you in metrics. I'm literally just going off of an outline and then speaking into it. And I bring to you the myths and the archetypal union archetypes that relate to the topic that I'm talking about. Because why? Because people want to hear the stories. They love it. They love to hear the stories. I love to hear the stories too. I know what I like, and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, let's see if people like hearing it from me. And it's fine if you don't. If you don't want to be here, if you don't like the message, it's not going to hurt my feelings if you leave. Okay? All right. So even though feminism gave us like many of these freedoms, we lost the femininity of our society in that. So let's see if we can listen to feminine voice, feminine expression. And if this is something that you are listening to and you're a woman and you're like, wow, I could really use a lot of help in this, I have a program I'm launching that is designed to look at 10 domains of your life, of your body, your mind, your spirit, your love, your beauty, all of these aspects of your life, and make a declaration, make a proclamation in a royal decree of here's how I'm going to stand in these domains. And that one is launching at 222. It's a group course. It's 4 weeks, women only. And that starts on August 4th. So if you are a man and you're listening to this and you're like, man, my wife could really use that. I could really use a stronger presence of her wisdom in our relationship, then I would encourage you to see if she's interested in that. 222 is not going to break the bank, and it's going to pay off dividends. When you have women that are sitting in their femininity and they're musing you, that's why the Andrew Tate story was kind of a big message. He got millions of dollars from doing this, basically scam of using women's energy to get money out of men, to exploit them. Because whether he knew it or not, when you exploit the feminine power, you're able to overcome your enemies. You're able to achieve your goals. That's why it's important for a man to have, a really solid muse, whether it's his wife, maybe it's his girlfriend, just make her your wife. Having these strong muse-like feminine energies around masculine men is part of this divine union. You're going to get a lot out of it. So if you want to help, your wife and she's interested in making these bigger declarations, it's not men hating. It's actually women and men loving is what the whole goal is. And then finally, if you are interested, I also have another program, which is a co-ed program. It's 8 weeks for 555, and it is something that you can bring to your boss or to your HR department and say, hey, I want to take this as a soft skills training leadership program. And so it is designed to help really bring in some emotional and social intelligence, as well as help you regulate your nervous system and become really present in your work life. So it's really designed for businesses and for people that are professionals and anything like that. So if that rings for you, that's great. I would love to hear from you, see you. I'll put this all in the show notes. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I will likely go live sometime later this week. Going to be working on cryptocurrencies and talking about digital money. And I'm going to be pulling some. I couldn't find anybody to talk about it with. But so think about for the digital series, I'll post a link or I'll post a schedule up when I have some time. But I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you got a ton out of this, that you're excited to kind of see the world from a different perspective. And yeah. So bye, Late Bear. Bye, Mike. Have a good day. I'll see you guys later.